Break On Through, the podcast where we talk to up-and-coming musicians and music lovers of all kinds. And today, I'm going to introduce you, even though I don't think I'm going to have to. If you listen to indie podcasts, you've heard of Chatsmash, and we have the one and only, the UK's best indie podcaster, Vinny Styles. What's up, Vinny?
What an amazing introduction. Thanks very much, Steve.
In my head, I had like such a bigger one planned, but I just couldn't spit it out.
No, honestly, that was more introduction than we needed. So yeah, I'm happy for that. And obviously, thank you very much for inviting me on.
Absolutely,
I've listened to all your shows, and it's great to be here. So
man, Vinny listens to my shows. That's spectacular. I listen to all your shows too.
Everyone.
You know, I'm a big fan of your show. I really am. I've listened to every single one of them from the beginning because you know me, and that's what I do. I go back and listen to them from the beginning.
Yeah, everyone should know that we're pretty good. We're pretty good friends.
Oh yeah, we're good friends. We talk a lot actually, and now that we've become friends across multiple platforms, like I feel like we talk every day. I think we talk every day.
I think we do. Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
It's like a long distance relationship.
It is.
We're ocean bros.
Can't stop love.
That's it.
Time and oceans, whatever. Nothing stops it. But originally, I remember I wanted you to come on the show because you had started telling me some funny stories, and then I found out that you kind of worked in the music industry. And you have these interesting stories, some of which I'm sure you're not going to bring up on here unless you want to.
Do you know what? I think it's like, in thinking about, like, listening to other episodes and thinking about the podcast and thinking what's music done for me, and it's like, I'm not... someone who's really followed sort of, playing an instrument and stuff through my life and things like that. But I have like touched in different ways in the music and in different sort of genres of music as well. Yeah, I've done some really silly things and have some really ridiculous stories.
You do, but they're great stories. Like the one you told us, I think I still tell people just because it's so funny.
We'll get to that.
Oh, great. I'm so happy that you're willing to talk about it. But I do want to ask you like some of the questions that I ask everybody else, not just because it's part of the show, but honestly, just because I'm curious because you live in a different country than me. And as well as I know you, I only know kind of you now. So like when you were growing up, I don't know what the music scene is like over there. But when was the first time in your life that you really heard music and thought, well, shit, this is my kind of music. This is what I like. This wasn't really my parents' stuff, but this is what I love.
Well, I think it was touched upon. I will go a little earlier in life in the way that I actually grew up about a mile away from where I live now. And I got two older sisters. And my first sort of recollection of sort of music as such was, obviously my parents had collected, sort of albums and 7-inch singles, and a lot of it was 50s and 60s music. Obviously, yes. I was born in the 70s, in the early 70s, so this would have been mid to late 70s, and probably mid to late 70s. But I remember with my sisters, and of course it's sacrilege, we'd just pour the records out on the floor, all of these 45s just scratched all over each
Awful.
other. And we'd have a record player on the floor, and we'd take it in turns. And the game was to jump off of like the top bunk bed to put a record on quickly and to try and get back on the bed before it played.
I bet your parents. I bet your parents were thrilled with that.
Yeah, exactly. So they're getting the thumping on the floor, and they're getting all their records scratched. And we took everything out of its sleeve. They're all over the place. But as such, we listened to things, and a lot of it was sort of 50s, 60s stuff. So it was like. Elvis, Chuck Berry, Buddy Holly, and stuff like that. And I think really that music, even now, sort of resonates back to me a bit. I like some really good soulful music and sort of early rock and stuff. So my first touch of music was probably, back then with my sisters, really, listening to 50s and 60s music.
Nice.
So
that's a lot of the stuff I think I was kind of subjected to first. I've been maybe not the 50s, but definitely like 60s, 70s. All classic rock, and I kind of figured that. I kind of figured that's what you were.
Yeah, I mean, you get people like Johnny Cash and Elvis and stuff, and they're in the 50s, man. They're sort of mid 50s, and they're almost on it, and it's quite funny how sort of they get once they hit it big, they've been grinding away at it for a little while, and they've done their years first in in the small towns, and again, it is a lot of it has come from 50s and 70s music, born out in the 60s. So
Yeah. That's cool. I would have never thought somebody like Johnny Cash would have been big, like where you're from.
um, I think it's yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's a different kind of promotion, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
It's
Oh
that
yeah.
weird thing. I'll touch on something like that later as well, with like stars coming to England and stuff as well. It's like it is weird, but then the Beatles came and you know did it big in America, didn't they? So
So just for anybody listening, Vinny is in the UK, and the internet's getting a little wonky. I don't even know if you're still there. You seem kind of frozen.
I can hear you as clear as a bell.
Yeah,
But I
I can hear.
apologise that our internet is
No,
terrible.
Look, we're talking literally oceans away from each other. So I mean, it is what it is. But no, you just
It's also the fact that I live in the middle of nowhere on a crappy internet signal.
oh
It's
man,
like I
people
could go
wouldn't
to
know
my
that
work and it's super fast, but
because your show is so crystal clear.
yeah, that's the power of editing and uploading.
Love it. Yeah. Oh man. So yeah, so that's what we grew up on. Man, I think that's why we get along, especially when we talk about music and stuff. I think we grew up on a lot of the same stuff. I mean, we're right around the same age, so it makes sense. But like,
Yeah, I mean, I'm born '73, so I'm
I mean,
48.
I'm born in '80, so I'm 41. We're not that far apart. Was
It's
anybody?
close enough for bros.
Yeah, exactly. We're bro. You're my big bro. Was anybody in your family a musician, or were they just music lovers?
Um, not massively. Again, I think they have probably a similar music taste to me, where I sort of, uh, I dabble in loads of different artists rather than there's only, I mean, rarely that I can find an album that I'm like, I'll listen to the whole thing. Whereas a lot of it, two or three songs from various artists
Yeah.
as such. But my sister was the biggest Beatles fan. And in a way, she sort of broke the Beatles for me because it was every day, all day, constantly. Through her teenage years, she was obsessed with the Beatles. It was all over her room. She went all touring around England to all the spots, and she had a friend, of course. Teenage girls together, and they were just terrible, rinsing and singing the Beatles constantly.
I would imagine the Beatles were probably everywhere. Because I know, like here in America, like when an American band makes it big, there were certain times, like when I was growing up, like when Metallica was big, you couldn't turn around without seeing Metallica something.
The difference is though the Beatles were done. I mean, they were done and finished by then.
Yeah,
By the time they're listening to it, it's almost like pretty much John Lennon shot and it's all over, and it's like it's but they're still listening to old music. But my God, did they listen to it?
yeah, but the Beatles were so influential in the way that they shaped music. So it wasn't even just that they're like from the UK. It was what they did for music. And
Yeah.
so I mean, the biggest band ever, I consider them the biggest band of all time, came out of the UK. So I would have just figured it was everywhere.
But it's like it begs the question though. Can you imagine if it had been a different band that had got there first?
Like what,
If
Zeppelin?
it was like, if it was, yeah, exactly. If it was a different band that had like really, really sort of stuck the pin in as the first one,
Man, who like the Stones?
the
Could have been the
world could be
Stones.
different.
Yeah, it could be, right? Build a time machine. So when you were growing up and you were in high school, like this is another question I always think about because here, and I'm going to ask you a lot of questions that are like just because you're British, I have to know. But when I grew up and I went to high school, I remember you would almost be friends with people based on literally just the kind of music that they listen to, right? So you would grow up with these kids, but by the time you hit, say, like middle school, going into high school, so I don't know, around 12 and beyond, your friends might not be the kids you grew up with. They'd all of a sudden turn into the friends that, like, if you listen to heavy metal, you were now friends with the heavy metal kids. Or if
Yeah.
you listen to country music, you were now friends with the country kids. And you really didn't intermingle all that much. I mean, you could, you say hi to somebody. What was it like growing up where you're from? Was it like that?
Yeah, pretty similar. Yeah, pretty similar. It's like it's the law of the jungle in school, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Everyone gangs up.
Oh, for sure.
We were. I had moved from down south in the country. I grew up till I was like, excuse me.
I'm not
I
editing
grew up
that out.
towards. Yeah, you edit that shit out.
No way.
I grew up basically. I grew up, say, about a mile away from where I live now, till I was about 8, and then my dad passed away when I was 8, and we ended up moving right up north to a different part of the country by the time I was like 10 years old. So I went from a really quite a quiet, happy, safe existence in the south of the country to like a northern town, in the 80s where it was like dog eat dog, bullying, hardcore school. And I hooked up with a lad also that had moved from London, and he had come up, and we were probably 11, 12 sort of years old really, and he was really into sort of metal and sort of more sort of metal style bands. And we actually formed a band, but this is we've said this, it's like we had a band in the way that I bought a shit guitar that I couldn't play, and he carried drumsticks and tapped them on stuff, but we were a band.
So you
okay?
weren't kidding about that.
No, I'm not
Oh,
kidding at all.
I thought that was a bit.
We had someone who was going to buy a bass but didn't. I had a shit guitar which was a Strat, but whatever it wasn't a Strat, and I'd laugh my ass off if it had actually been a Fender Strat, because I pulled it to pieces and painted it and generally fucked it up. It probably had like a string missing and two were the same and stuff.
Didn't matter. You weren't playing it.
Didn't matter. Yeah, and our gear was like the denim look,
Okay.
So it was like the denim-y jackets, but we had painted. I think we called it. It was like rice or something, and apparently I didn't know what it was, and it was something to do with something like the early cyberpunk or role playing or something like this, and it was like where in a dystopian world when people have outstayed their welcome, they're recycled in the rice, and it was like a big fucking grinding machine and people in. So
awesome.
my mate's like, yeah, man, rice, that's the name. So we painted this on the back of our jackets, in enamel paints and shit, and grew our hair out a bit. But then you look back at it, and it's like I was just some scrawny kid wearing some shit fucking clothes, but thought we were really cool.
That's
really cool.
That's actually pretty awesome.
It wasn't awesome.
It sounds awesome. Man, you guys should reform
not.
and make some songs now.
Yeah, but we sort of like tried to sing some songs and things, and I think, and I know you've mentioned it, it was definitely like that Guns N' Roses sort of thing. I think Appetite for Destruction's definitely got a lot to answer for.
Every episode, man, it seems to be. I always thought the Beatles would be the most influential band, but it really seems like Guns N' Roses is the most influential band of at least everybody I talk to.
I think that's it. I mean, when it comes to like sort of cool performance, like. Axl Rose humping up and down on the stage and, running backwards and forwards with his flowing hair as such, and Slash just calling the hell out of it with his guitar, man, and the fag hanging out. It was just like, yes.
I think for a lot of people, because, I mean, we'll get to it, but, I mean, you claim to not be that good, but you do play guitar, and from what I've heard, you're not bad. But I think watching Slash, there's something mystical about the way he is and the way he presents himself and the way he plays. Because for me, when I was younger, I know the first time I saw Slash, I was like, I want to play guitar like that guy, which I'll never hit because I still can't. But, I mean, there's just something captivating about Slash and how he is and the way he plays. He just seems like the ultimate cool guy.
Yeah, I think it's the same with, like Jimi Hendrix in a way that I can play some chords that are the chords in the song, and you're like, I can play that, and I can hear, that's the sort of notes and that's the chords, but it's the soul he puts into it, man, and it's what he does with the guitar, and it's like, he is that song, he is playing that, and Slash is that, he is that riff, he is that, and yeah, you can learn it and mechanically string through it, but it's putting that effort into it to get that out.
See, I don't think I really
yourself into it, isn't it?
I don't think I really appreciated how cool Jimi Hendrix was until I got older and decided for myself that he was cool. Because my dad, he was a musician, and growing up, my dad